My lords, I congratulate the noble Lord Steele for his tenacious efforts to reform this House. His bill does so in a way that would improve our role as a revising chamber without tearing up the Constitution and turning us into a second-rate version of the House of Commons. Unfortunately, the noble Lord's party leader, the Deputy Prime Minister, favours the destruction of this House, and his cabinet remit includes the complex subject of constitutional change. Now, on taking office, Mr. Clegg expressed his irritation at our continued existence. Indeed, he admitted his impatience at his very first appearance as a coalition minister at the dispatch box in June. He said then that Lord's reform was more than 100 years overdue, and that people have been talking about Lord's reform for over a century. He went on to say that the time for talk is over. And my lords, I don't wish to be uncharitable. Mr. Clegg has heavy responsibilities and was propelled into high office in unusual circumstances at a time of economic crisis. Even so, he should know better than to declare time's up on Lord's reform before we've seen a word of the draft legislation to replace this House from the cross-party committee he chairs. In June, he promised we would see the committee's proposals by the end of the year. Now we hear it will wait until the spring. Until then, Parliament is denied access to his committee's agenda and minutes, and we, on the crossbenchers, those on the backbenches of the three main parties, as well as the bishops, are excluded from its deliberations. As far as I'm concerned, it's a cabal. So let's hear no more about the government's determination to push through the reform of this House. Push through, my lords, in Mr. Clegg's words. They're not mine. They come from his statement in June. He may push as hard as he likes, but there are many in your lordship's House who will not be pushed into submission. Deputy Prime Minister talks as if this House has been set in aspic since Mr. Asquith was Prime Minister. Doesn't he realise that this House has been in a state of continual change for many decades, as we've already heard? Also, does he not understand that we are eager to accept further changes, provided they make sense, as the noble Lord Steele has made clear, and many of your lordships throughout these debates have done so? And this bill before us offers an excellent way forward. An elected chamber rivaling the Commons does not. The longer the debate about our future continues, the stronger our case becomes. Now, this weekend, the Parliament Channel will broadcast a televised debate on Lord's reform, which I and many other your lordships attended. To my delight, Shami Chakrabarti, the director of the human rights body Liberty, gave us a ringing endorsement. She said the government should not tinker with part of the Constitution without regard to what happens to the rest of it. Wise words. She believed the courts would become more powerful without us, and I agree. We already have a Supreme Court across the way. If we want an American-style Supreme Court, the government's going the right way about it. Mrs. Chakrabarti also praised this House for protecting vulnerable minorities and fundamental rights and freedoms. Britain, she said, would be a lot less free today without us. Does Mr. Clegg seriously dispute it? Does the Prime Minister not understand the damage the destruction of this House would cause under the spurious guise of greater democracy? The Americans have an apt phrase for my advice to the government. They should get real about this place. We don't live in another world, as our blinkered critics would have us believe. We don't anchor for the faded aristocratic glories of the past centuries. When I leave here, I get the number 11 bus home. Mr. Clegg, not us, is out of date when he talks about 1911. It's a smokescreen for packing this house with new peers on a scale never before known. Consider the recent intakes. We've heard a little bit about them. The three main parties have gained 105 new peers in the last 6 months, with the coalition taking the lion's share. That will not stop there unless better councils prevail. Meg Russell of UCL's Constitutional Unit reckons the Conservatives need another 86 new peers and the Liberal Democrats another 99 before this House fully reflects the way people voted in the last election. And that's conditional on Labour's strength being frozen for the rest of this Parliament. The scale of what is happening is astonishing. When the latest intake has taken the oath, this House will have over 800 members, assuming that those of us already here survive this winter. That's our biggest membership since hereditary peers lost their right to sit here 11 years ago. It's already an absurd number. Meg Russell estimates the government will need to increase our numbers to nearly 1,000 if it wants to get control of this place before the next election. It will be unmanageable. It will cost more, and we shall lose the country's respect. When families in our country are called upon to make sacrifices to pay off the national debt, surely the last thing we need is a chamber of 1,000 peers or anywhere near it. I urge the government to think again. Forget party dogmas. Britain's freedoms are at stake, and I warmly support this bill as a more responsible way forward for us all. Yeah.